Hey, I'm Jeffrey Bützer. Welcome to the Day for Night podcast where we talk about movies and stuff. This week, I'm speaking with, I think I'd say, yeah, he's my favorite hip hop rapper, artist, person in Atlanta. He's one of my favorites. He's Zano Bathroom. He's in a group called Social Studies. We worked together sort of one time, and where you traded recommendations. We both picked a movie for the other person to watch that we haven't seen. So yeah, I'd like to come on in, Zane.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, buddy. Yeah, I guess we really only worked together once, but I can't remember how we met. Do you know how we met?
I don't, man. That's a very good question.
That's what
Um,
it's like in Atlanta, though, right? You're just around people, and then eventually you know them.
yeah. It probably was through criminal.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean, I used to
like,
go in there all the time, but I don't know when we like knew each other's names.
right.
Um, yeah, thanks for doing the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
I know you're a cinephile as well. Do you have were you a fan of Godard, who we lost this week?
Yeah, man, I need to brush up on that. I'm not like a huge French New Wave expert. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And when I saw that he passed away, I was like, wow, that's like a big deal. Somebody that made that leap from critic to director, and then in that leap change, introducing jump cuts and all that stuff, it's a huge loss. So yeah, I'm ashamed to say that I'm not as familiar with his stuff as I should be,
Oh
but
man, there's just
definitely familiar with his name and legacy.
well, I mean, there's so much stuff. It's impossible to know
Right,
everything.
right.
Yeah, for the people that aren't like super familiar, he like really revolutionized like rule breaking in movies. His first movie was in 1959, and he shot the back of people's heads. He used cameras on wagons. He would he was famously like invented like incorporated jump cuts on purpose
Hmm.
in movies. Yeah, I got into him because like when you're like kind of studying movies, he's one of the first European guys I think
Sure.
most people get into. And I saw his movies kind of in order. Like I saw Breathless, and then that's the one everybody talks about, and then like Alphaville. But yeah, he was kind of the last of that generation of like the '60s, late '50s guys still kicking, and girls. Agnes Varda, we lost
Right.
her. Anyway, he's also problematic. He said some pretty anti-Semitic things over the years, but
Oh wow.
he,
Okay, I didn't know
you
that
know,
part
his
about
dad, he's an older guy. He was 95, so his
him.
dad is like kind of a jerk. And I don't know the whole story. Somebody sent me a link today about it though, and I was like, oh man, I know he hates Spielberg, but I didn't know that. You know, who knows? It's the internet. Maybe he's not.
Yeah,
Um,
I saw that quote, that weird thing he said about Schindler. He said something like sideways about Schindler's List, like it
yo,
was
yeah, he wasn't a fan of that at all.
right.
But I don't know. I just the anti-Semitism was brought to my attention this morning, and I haven't really dug into it. But I don't. In case anybody calls me out in the comments for talking about a canceled person, I like his movies. I think his '60s
Right.
stuff is fantastic. Also, he gave me a lot of hope that a bald film geek could meet a beautiful woman.
That's awesome. What?
Yeah.
While we're on that subject, I thought that he had done Eyes Without a Face. Who directed Eyes Without a
Oh
Face?
no, that's I'd have to look it up. It's not like it's the guy that did Diabolique.
Right,
Uh,
right, right, right,
it's a different guy. Same era though.
right,
Uh,
right. Because that's the one. Like whenever there's a new wave conversation, like Eyes Without a Face is always thrown out there, and I'm like, when he passed, I was like, oh, that's he directed that movie, but I was wrong, and I don't know who directed that.
Yeah, it
Sorry
came
for
out
my.
in 1960. It was more kind of lumped in with like horror movies.
Mhm.
It's a guy I can't even say his name. It's like Georges Franjou or something. I know
Okay.
I've seen some other movies because I'm pretty sure he did Diabolique. I'm looking it up. But he did the Metro in 1935. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, I saw that face is a great movie. Have you seen that
Yeah,
one?
I haven't. I have. I just always heard like one of those ones you always hear about. And
Yeah,
I
it's
apologize for
fantastic.
this handheld action going on. I don't have a stand for my phone, so
No, that's all right. I got mine popped up on a little percussion instrument. Um,
nice.
hey, Zeno, so what's the first movie you remember actually going to see in a theater?
Ooh.
You
Um,
know? Putting on the spot.
Probably Superman.
Like the first one?
Yeah.
That's like 78, right?
Yeah.
Man, I didn't know you were older than me.
Yeah. I'll be 49 on my birthday.
Oh wow, you just look
Yeah.
young. I,
Yeah. So
that's
yeah, it
cool.
was like Superman, and then probably Empire that really
Oh yeah.
stood out. Just yeah. I
I
think
have
that's yeah.
I have connections to both those being on TV a lot when I was a child. Like
Yeah.
that's how I saw them both. I saw them both like not in order because I'd
Hmm.
catch like the end of it, and then later on at night they'd show the beginning. And those movies, and I'm talking when I'm like 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
I remember seeing those, and that's how I saw both those. Yeah, and I don't remember much about Superman. I remember liking it. Um,
Yeah. They played those. They reran those a ton on cable and on regular TV. They were just so impactful.
yeah, it was like in the early days, like of right when VCRs were coming out, so they show movies a
Hmm.
lot on television.
Yep.
Want to talk about the movie you picked and why you picked it?
For the one I picked for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Space is a Place. I just love that movie because it's so surreal. And I love kind of like cheaply made B movies, and then it's also like a concert movie.
Yeah.
It's like there's so much going on in that movie, and I don't know who actually directed it, or like the name of the director is escaping me right now.
I've got
But
it right here. Yeah, it's a guy named John Coney, and I think it's the only thing he ever directed. But
wow.
it was,
Okay.
I think he maybe did commercials or something. But it was, Sun
Okay.
Ra's script. Yeah, for those of you guys that don't know, it's like a Sun Ra movie that he wrote,
Right.
and it's in the Afrofuturist like sort of
Yes. Yeah. He's
subgenre,
like
which I'm not super
the
familiar with.
yeah. Like I'm a huge fan of his music and like his whole philosophy behind his music and his whole persona, which he was like he pioneered kind of having that persona to match the music, like this whole mythology that was going on behind the scenes and like in the actual lyrics of the music. Um, and just a lot of really great players came through his band. He influenced a lot of people. And like really the way I learned about Sunrise, just like Thurston Moore on MTV one day just offhandedly said something about Sun Ra. And I'm like, what's that?
Yeah,
What's
it's a good
Sun Ra?
name.
Yeah. And then, from there, like, I think that was like 91 and he passed away in like 93.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, just a huge
Yeah,
fan.
my connection to getting into him was actually how I discovered probably my favorite like jazz musician is Sonny Sharrock,
Oh
and
yeah, sure. Yeah.
yeah, he's my favorite. And so they wanted Sun Ra to do the music for Space Ghost Coast to Coast when it was like in production, and then he passed away like when they were producing it. And
Oh
so
wow.
since they couldn't get Sun Ra, they started thinking about people, and then they were like, let's see if Sonny will do it. And then that was the last thing Sonny Sharrock did because he died, and like right after that. And
I had no idea. So that's him. That.
yeah, Sharrock, yeah. And the funny thing is, like it's full circle because Thurston
Mhm.
Moore did an episode when he died where he just came out and played guitar for 15 minutes, and at the end, Space Ghost was like, "We're not doing a real episode tonight. We're just celebrating the music of Sharrock or something like that." And it's on the DVD still, and it's
That
funny how that
is
stuff all.
nuts. That's crazy.
Yeah. Um, I didn't know anything about this movie. I think I'd
Hmm.
seen the listing on Criterion because
Hmm.
they released it.
Yeah.
And you know me, I like movies. I like old movies, and
Yeah.
I loved it. I don't. Maybe you can get into. I don't. I was talked about this a couple weeks ago. I don't really. I don't really read into politics of films ever. I think it's just the way I
Hmm.
was raised, and so I know
Sure.
there's like some stuff going on in this
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically about them trying to like get rid of white people, and
Yeah. Get rid of
we
them,
should.
get away from them, or yeah, just or try to mitigate their influence or something. Yeah, it's very. I mean, that's like at the height of Black Power.
Hmm.
I think it came out in 74, so it was probably shot like 72, 73, something like
Hmm.
that. So like that that was all, that was all like in the atmosphere at that point. And it's in a lot of his music. Um yeah, and he's very, it's basically his propaganda of his message,
Yeah,
Um yeah.
and it
Yeah,
was
that
interesting. It was the director was white,
hmm
which reminded me of. I was going to recommend this. We'll talk about this movie later, but around the same time, have you ever seen Putney Swope?
I'm familiar with Putney Swope. That's Robert Downey
Yeah,
directed it. I haven't seen it. That's another one I need to see.
it's like one of my favorites. It's the same thing where it's like white writers and directors with almost an all
hmm
black cast. They're not similar much outside of that. I mean, Putney Swope is almost like it's almost like Kentucky Fried Movies or something. It's just like a bunch of
Oh,
jokes. It's like a bunch of gags and like it's
okay.
really funny. It's one of my favorites. I've had people tell me that it's like problematic, and I'm sure it is because I mean it was made by like a white guy. And
Yeah.
the one funny thing is when they, this is like the '70s, and when they shot it, the old man that's in Putney Swope, apparently he was like rah, 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 when he would talk, he was like really mumbly. And when they
hmm
went to edit it, they were like, we can't like use this audio. It's awful. So Robert Downey went in and redid his voice, and that's one thing people have a problem
Oh
with because
boy. Wow.
he's just basically been like, hey man, I'm Putney Swope, and like
Wow.
like
That's like
matching.
there's like a legacy of that in their family with if you think about Tropic Thunder.
Yeah, people brought that movie up a lot when Tropic Thunder came out, and he
hmm
was kind of doing the voice and that I noticed like after I saw Putney Swope. But yeah, it just reminded me of like there's a lot of primarily black films directed by white people. I mean, a
hmm
couple of years ago there was a Last Black Man in San Francisco that was pretty good. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
It was funny. This sounds weird, but I was watching it, and like halfway through, I was like, I don't think I think a white guy made this. I just had to. I don't know. I didn't know who it was.
That's funny.
He's like skateboarding and stuff, and which doesn't mean any. That's not why I'm thinking that. I watched it because like the skateboarder Day One song was in it, and it just looked really
hmm
cool, and I enjoyed it. But I just like I had a feeling. Um,
Right.
but yeah, man, I don't. This movie is surreal. The space of the place, and the concert footage is great.
Yeah.
Um, there's an early scene where he goes back in time, I think, to Chicago, and he's like
Yeah.
playing in like an old nightclub, and then his piano playing just like makes the room go crazy and like
Yeah.
literally like,
Yeah.
blow up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that, I mean,
And
that's like one of the opening.
doesn't smoke come out of the piano also at that point?
Yeah, and glasses start
Yeah.
shattering, and it's
Yeah.
all over the place. They travel back to
Yeah.
the '50s or the '30s. Um, I really like the whole movie. One of my
Yeah.
favorite aspects is they're like we both had to reschedule because we both had some serious family stuff going on.
hmm
So we watched this like 2 weeks ago, so a lot of this is from memory and notes. But I
Yeah.
remember they like him and some like fate overseer character, like
Yeah.
who's sort of like death or something, and him
Yeah.
play a card game, and it
Yeah.
reminded me a lot
That
of
Faustian scene where he's like, well, what about a concert for the fate of, the world or whatever.
right,
Yeah. Yeah, that
that
that shot is just great. The way it's composed, it's like it's centered on them, and you can see all this like far into the background. And I can't remember if they pull back or zoom in. But yeah, that's just such a memorable shot.
yeah,
Um,
that
yeah,
part was really good. And it
yeah,
was like reminiscence of Ingmar Bergman's Seventh Seal, which is about like a knight playing. I don't know if maybe it was a nod to that because the whole premise of the Seventh Seal is that
hmm
a knight is playing chess with death to try and save his own life,
hmm
and it kind of
yeah,
reminded me of that. But yeah, I mean, it's low budget, but it's like super memorable.
yeah,
Like they did a lot with a little, which I'm always I always like. And there's a lot of exploitation in it. There's a lot of like
mhm,
sexual stuff, and there's some
yeah,
really good. There's those really good jokes in the hospital bed with the nurses. Do you remember that?
yeah, yeah. And also when I think he had tried to open up like a center, and they were people were coming there, and he's like talking about transmolecularization and all
Mhm.
that, and like traveling through other dimensions and that kind of stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of very like quotable just gags and like, yeah, that supplied me and my friends with slang for like many years.
Yeah, it's good, man. Yeah, I'm trying to remember the joke is like he's like he calls in like two nurses and like he's in there with his buddy and they both strip and then he's like, all right, get out of here, I got this, and he like kicks the guy who's in the hospital out and the guy's like sitting out. It's like a Tom and Jerry. He's like, no,
Yeah,
please.
yeah,
And
yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah, it was pretty good. Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. I don't know much about Afrofuturism. I was trying to read up a little today on it. Do you know much about that whole like subculture?
Yeah, definitely. He's pretty much the father of it. And the thing is like the term is somewhat disputed because it was I don't know the gentleman's name, but like a white anthropologist. He kind of coined that term, but it's the kind of situation where he came up with a name of something that was already happening, and you
Okay.
know what I mean. And it kind of just stuck. But yeah, pretty much Sunbrow was like he was like I think he's like the first on record person to say he had been abducted by like a UFO, like
Yeah, yeah,
in like in the 30s. Because like if you read his biography, which is also called Space in the Place, it breaks all that stuff down. And he kind of like was talking about that stuff way before anybody else, and then his legacy ends up like I don't know, like inadvertently or on purpose or what, ends up getting carried on by like people that have these larger than life personas, kind of like Screaming Jay Hawkins is one,
yeah,
George Clinton in Parliament Funkadelic, that's another one. They take that kind of like mythology and iconography and like infuse it into the music and then make it an integral part of the music. And then the hip hop generation picked up on that same thing, like groups like Sonic Force, Nucleus, Egyptian Lover, and it is still going to this day. A lot of techno people also have that same kind of like Afrofuturist mentality, but that's that branch that comes out of Detroit is it takes it to a whole nother level.
yeah,
Sunrise he was basically working out. He grew up in Alabama, but he was between Chicago and Philadelphia mostly, if I understand it correctly. Yeah.
that's cool. Yeah, I mean, I probably maybe I'm naive, but I feel like his influence you can be seen in Killer Priest maybe too.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's all through hip hop, like both from people that know, like that are consciously doing it,
Directly.
and people that don't realize, where
Yeah,
a certain iconic thing might come from.
like a generation removed. Like some people are directly. I just feel like Killer Priest has a lot of stuff. Like
Yeah, yeah.
his whole
Totally.
style, rapping about the
Hmm.
cosmos and Egypt
Yeah.
and stuff, and like
Hmm.
it's pretty. I love him.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Great
and I mean, you
MC.
even see like the I feel like you even see like sort of like how cyberpunk and some of those weird like
Hmm.
subgenres. Like I feel like you can see the like and even Black Panther and stuff and some of the imagery
Yeah, yeah,
and
definitely.
stuff like that. It's a neat movement. Yeah, like I said, I was reading a little bit. I just didn't feel like confident enough to speak on it. Really
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. And
Yeah,
it,
that's
it
cool.
predates. I mean, his version of it predates like pretty much everybody.
I mean, and the orchestra still play, right? Don't they still tour and
Yeah,
stuff?
yeah. Marshall Allen is leading the orchestra now, and they still play and tour around and give workshops and
So
stuff like
cool.
that. Yeah.
Well, it's a good. Yeah, thanks for recommending. I really like. It's fairly short, and if people want to find it, I think I rented it from YouTube or
Okay.
Google or something. And it's on the Criterion Channel.
Oh wow.
You have
Okay.
to go on. And so the movie I picked for you to watch was I feel like an unsung guy in the movie industry, like the whole film
Yeah.
industry, is Kiyoshi Kurosawa, and he's not related to Akira Kurosawa at all.
Right. Right. Right.
They both have
That's
the same last name. But he's kind of known for doing like J horror they call the stuff like Ring, which he didn't do, but those style films like he did one called
hmm
Pulp. I don't know if you did you ever
okay.
see that.
I have.
Um, and the one I recommended for you was Doppelganger, just because I
Yeah.
don't know it was on my mind.
Hmm.
Um, it's one of his like I think it might have just been like a straight to video movie in Japan. I'm not
Oh
totally
wow.
sure if it was released in theaters. Um, So this has my favorite actor ever, and I don't mean my favorite Japanese actor. Like Koji Yakushuo is like my dude. Like I love him. If he looks familiar to people, he was in Babel and he was in the original Shall We Dance, and he'll pop up in like any American movie where they have Asians in it. Like he's in
Yeah.
Shogun Assassins and
Uh,
I'm trying to remember like Memoirs of a Geisha and stuff. Like he's on
okay.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard to explain. It's what I like about it. I think I told you the box says like the most thrilling horror film or something. The box says something about it being a horror film. It is not a horror film. It's a black
It's not.
comedy.
It's yeah. It's like a fairy tale almost, like a urban kind of like folklore.
Yeah,
With the whole doppelganger concept.
but there's straight
And
up
I felt like,
slapstick in it too.
yeah, definitely. But definitely like a dark kind of abstract. And what I loved was what I really liked about it is like when his doppelganger was first showing up, the weird kind of like framing that he was doing, like showing him like cutting up the screen in little boxes and then
Yeah.
moving it around. It was like a kind of almost a manga influence,
Hmm.
and the storytelling is like a manga kind of feel to it. That movie was amazing. I really enjoyed that, and then
Cool.
the way that characters would like leave, and then you wouldn't see them, and then they would come back, and
Yeah.
there would be something different about them, and then it just kept evolving until you get this kind of like, oh well, I'm not sure what the ending means, but but I'm
Yeah.
satisfied by it. You know what I mean? Yeah, it was
Yeah.
just
The
very
story.
entertaining.
I have a habit of most of the movies I pick on here are not story heavy. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this one is about a guy who's trying to design a like a form of wheelchair that gives people that are paraplegic
Mm-hmm.
autonomy, and then it has a little bit to do with bureaucracy or like his like company like coming down on him and giving him all these
Right,
deadlines,
right.
which kind of frustrates him. And then he's kind of a timid guy, and then he gets told this folklore that like if you ever see your doppelganger, you're gonna die. And then
Right,
he goes
right.
home like all stressed out, and he meets his doppelganger, and his doppelganger's like a cool guy, like smokes cigarettes in
Mm-hmm.
his life, picks up
Yeah,
chicks,
gets
and
everything
he's like
done.
a
Yeah.
nerd. And then it's all over the place. Like it's just so funny because, like I said, I almost pulled the box out. On the box, it's like
Mhm.
the new horror Japanese, export or
Yeah.
something, and there's no horror in it. There's nothing scary.
No,
Like it's
it's
not.
not horrific. If
No,
anything, it's like a little bit of science fiction with the chair, and then
yeah.
some like fantasy with the actual doppelgangers.
And then you have like action segments, like that whole big part at the end with that other
Yeah,
guy,
yeah,
where they end up on the truck and stuff. It's
yeah.
awesome.
That all of that was yeah.
I
They're
still,
running. Yeah, it's just like he packed so much stuff into that movie. I don't remember how long it is. It's like
it's not super long. It's right
right
on
at
two.
2 hours.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. I'm pulling it up real quick. But like, yeah, I can't find it. Oh well. But yeah, he's done a lot of movies too. Like that guy, he
Yeah,
started
I
out
saw that.
in Japanese pink films, which are like basically what like what we would call like exploitation, like girl in
Hmm.
prison kind of stuff. He did
Right.
a lot of that in Japan, and then his first big movie, I have a poster saved for, is Cure. If you watch him, the next one you should watch is this one. I didn't
Okay.
recommend this one because this is like telling somebody to watch Citizen Kane before they like. The Cure is a masterpiece. Like it's I guess Bong Joon Ho, the guy who did
Hmm.
Parasite, said that this is
Right.
like the greatest like I don't know what he said, the greatest like crime film ever made or something.
Okay.
It's coming out
What
in
year did that
Criterion.
come out?
It came out in '97.
Okay. Okay.
And the what was I going to say? It, I totally lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. Oh, but yeah, it came out in '97, and yeah, Criterion's about to finally release it because it's been a little hard to find for a few years. I think some sites still have it, but everybody should be able to find it pretty soon. But like, I'm not trying to lay it on thick, but people should watch this movie. It's like I don't even want to say anything about it. I think you'll be blown away. But have you seen any of his movies before?
No, I heard his name. like at some point when you're like always digging around through movies, you hear that, oh, there's another director like whose last name is Kurosawa.
Yeah.
And I've seen most of Akira Kurosawa's films, but I haven't. This was the first one by Kiyoshi Kurosawa that I had seen.
Yeah, okay, so I got introduced to him back in the Hollywood video days. I was just looking
Okay.
around one day, and I saw that movie Bright Future, and on the back it was like it referenced David Lynch and Luis Buñuel, and I loved those kind of movies. And
Right.
I didn't feel like it was anything like them, but I didn't care. I have their movies, so I
Right.
watched it and I liked it. I didn't love it. I thought it was good. And then Doppelganger came out, and I love that actor because he was in a couple movies I like. One's called The Ill, which also came out in '97. It's really hard to find. It's so crazy when movies are hard to find nowadays, but it is. I think every once in a while somebody sticks it up on YouTube. But so I love that actor, and so I gave Doppelganger a chance. And then after that, like every once in a while, I'll find one of his movies, and just like I always enjoy him. Charisma is the last one I saw, and it's really bizarre. Again, it's kind of like a fairy tale. It's like about a toxic tree.
Oh wow.
But yeah, it's really good. Sorry, I kind of steamrolled you there a lot. You can go on about it too. I'm sorry, I kind of
Yeah.
got off
Yeah.
track there.
No, I mean, yeah, no, I was enjoying just listening to you. Yeah. I mean, yeah, like I said, the camera techniques, the kind of constantly evolving story, and like the way he was messing with the characters was just really cool. And like, like if you have seen like or heard any kind of doppelganger story, you know that there's going to be some kind of gruesome ending, and you know what I mean. And I just enjoyed it. I mean, if you got any like questions about my impressions about it,
No, I was just curious in general. It's funny. I I don't know if you're like this as an artist, but sometimes like other artists give you permission to kind of do stuff, you know. And I'm sure you've seen Ghost Dog, right, by Jim Jarmusch.
yeah, yeah,
All right, so that's a movie I love, and it sounds like I'm getting off track, but I'm not. So there's that scene where he shoots the guy up through the shower tube or whatever.
yeah, yeah,
Like he
yeah.
unscrews it. That's from a '60s movie.
Oh
Called
wow, okay.
it's from a Japanese movie called Branded to Kill, and it's straight out of it. It's the same thing. And I stole a gag from Doppelganger in a script, but I mean it's not even that specific. It's the part where the guy's running and they open the door and they hit the guy.
Uh-huh.
It was almost like a Three Stooges gag. But yeah, I put that in the script one time. Um, but yeah, just in general, the jokes in this movie, I'm having trouble remembering a lot of it because I like I said, I watched this like a month ago in preparation.
Yeah,
So
same.
I
Yeah.
watched yours like 2 weeks ago, but yeah, I recommend, like I said, looking at some of his other stuff because I think you'll the one I'm going to recommend at the end. I really recommend. And The Cure, like I said, it's coming out really soon. His movies are very like I can't put my finger on it. It's almost like David Lynch in terms of, not like they're weird, but you know how like you watch a David Lynch movie and you're like, man, nobody does, like you can't like
Yeah.
compare it. They just
Right.
have this own, like the manga stuff was interesting. That's that area of Japanese I'm not like culture I'm not too schooled in. Like I've seen Vampire Hunter D and Akira. You know, that's like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
extent of
I've
it.
been watching that stuff for, I'm more into the movies and the shows.
Hmm.
But yeah, I've been consuming that stuff for a long time. And yeah, it definitely has a dreamlike quality to it. Do all his movies have that same kind of like feel?
Some of them, a lot of them, yeah, aren't logical. Like they'll just like stuff will happen. I guess it's almost like magical realism because something they're not exactly surreal, but something will happen that just doesn't really like Cure for example. When you see that, there's like it's not supernatural. There's just this event going on with these serial killers, and they don't really resolve it. It just happens, you know.
Right.
Um, but yeah, it's interesting because like I said, you always want to kind of compare artists and be like so you can give people an idea. But as far as his films go, like I don't. The people that he reminds me of are like super obscure, and he doesn't really remind me that much of them. Like there's a few like there's a guy named Shohei Mamura, and I know he
Okay.
must be influenced by. You might have heard of him. He did like the Pornographers, and he did um Black Rain. I don't know if you ever saw that, like a war
Okay.
movie.
I've
Um,
heard of the first one. I haven't heard of the second one,
oh,
but
okay.
I
And,
haven't
oh,
seen either of them.
Vengeance is Mine. Have you ever seen that?
Nope.
Okay, so that's like I guess it's like the first Japanese serial killer,
Oh
and
wow.
he made this like 3 hour movie about him. It's on a Criterion. Shohei Mamura did, and like he's somebody who I feel like influenced Kurosawa a bit, but it's very like I said, he's very like in his own world, which I like. Like you were talking about, a lot of his framing and stuff and his shooting techniques are kind of like reminiscent of certain people, but his storytelling is just pure him, which I always that's what I'm sure you're like that too. I look for like originality in artists.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I'm glad you liked it, and I really liked what you showed me. Um,
Yeah.
I typically do. Yeah, I guess we'll go there in a second. Do you have any shows going on? This is going to air on Friday. Do you got any shows coming up in Atlanta? Albums?
No. There is Soul Food Cypher on Sunday at Create ATL,
There's a
which is
what? What
Soul
is
Food
there?
Cypher. Yeah, it's like this organization that I'm a part of. We do freestyle ciphers every month, so people come out and do improvised rhymes. So that's every fourth Sunday. So that's Sunday.
Where is that?
It's at Create ATL.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, yeah.
That sounds fun. Do you guys have any new recordings? I've been bad at keeping up with everybody. I meant to ask you before.
Well, social studies is working on some new stuff now. We don't, like I said, we don't have any shows coming up, but we're working on recorded stuff, a new album. Well, actually, I think Chris has said it's going to be an EP, but he keeps adding songs, so it might end up being an album.
I swore I wasn't going to make any more full lengths. I was just going to do EPs because I feel like it's the same amount of work. I mean, it's like less work, but as far as like the reception, because I don't think I don't know that from what I do, I don't know that people care about full albums anymore.
Right,
That's cool.
right. It's weird now. People definitely have different listening habits these days.
Yeah, but yeah, I always like what you guys do. I think it's great. I wasn't kidding. Like as far as like Atlanta people, You're up there in general on my list. I was like,
Man, thanks, man. Same.
yeah, my kid is super into hip hop right now. It's funny. We were watching this halftime thing, and he's
Hmm.
12, and like Fitty and all those guys were up, and then Kendrick came up, and I was like,
Yeah,
oh, and like I made like a little oh, and he's like, you like Kendrick Lamar, Dad? I was like, yeah, I like Kendrick Lamar, and he's like, oh, I didn't know, and then he started like getting really excited. He didn't realize we hadn't talked about that, and so I've been
that's
showing him
funny.
like
That's great.
yeah, dude. I showed him like I've tried to show him like conscious stuff like I said um Kill a Priest and Run the
Hmm.
Jewels and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
He's big in that
yeah,
stuff. So I told him about you guys. I think I showed him some videos. I'm gonna get on that though. I'll send him your Bandcamp.
yeah.
And
Dope, dope.
yeah, I
That's
love it,
awesome.
man. Because I was just like him when I was a kid. That was my first love. Like I've told you that before. Like I'm
Hmm.
into all kinds of stuff. But when I was 7 or 8, like when MTV was coming up, I was like. I think I might have told you this, but I was like instantly attracted to like hip hop, and like when
Hmm.
you're that little, like I wasn't super aware of race. I just knew that like I didn't look like a rapper, it was just a disappointment to me. I was like, well, I can never be a rapper. And then those commercials for the Beastie Boys came out, and I was like, oh man, I guess I can. And it was like really cool. It was like really exciting.
That's
Of
funny.
course,
That's
I didn't.
great.
Yeah, I didn't follow that path, but like at the time, it was like cool because it wasn't like a huge deal. Like I wasn't like I'm white because we grew up in
Hmm.
like Miami and all of our neighbors were like Cuban and like it
Hmm.
was everybody where we lived and but yeah the Beastie Boys gave me permission. I was like, oh cool, I can rap. So what's your movie you recommended? The other movie.
Brother from another planet.
Man, that
Uh,
what's that dude's name, that actor in that?
Man, I don't know his name, but he's like in everything. He's been in
That dude
everything.
rules.
Yeah,
He was in the X-Files, remember,
yeah, yeah,
in
yeah,
Smallville.
yeah. Yeah, that guy. Man, I wish I
I'll look it up
had
while you're
done.
talking about it.
Yeah, I wish I had pulled it up before him and the director. I should have pulled it up before I jumped
The
on here.
director is John Sayles.
Oh, okay, okay.
who did like Lone Star and
Oh yeah.
uh, he's a big indie director.
Hmm.
But yeah, go ahead and talk about that for a minute. I'll pull up his name.
Yeah, this movie is basically about uh an alien who lands on Earth and ends up on Earth, and he happens to be just a black man, and so he experiences. I think Brother from Another Planet came out in '86, um, '86 or
84.
84. Wow. Okay. So yeah, so he experiences. I think he's in supposed to be in New York. So he just experiences that marginalization and discrimination of that time, which that's like Reagan era
Yeah.
the that flavor of stuff. So like people, and he doesn't speak through most of the movie, so
Oh,
it's
really?
basically him just showing up places and people being like, what are you doing here? And he's thinking like they're saying, what are you doing here as an as an extraterrestrial, but they're just saying like, I don't know who this black man is. And then
Oh,
they're also, I think, some black people also try to like befriend him and like help him out, and they figure out that he's an alien. But it's been a good minute since I watched it. I've watched it so many times, like over the years, but I need to rewatch it. It's probably been a good like 5 or 10 years since the last time I watched it.
man. Yeah, so his name's Joe Morton. And
Yeah.
I used to watch Smallville, and he was on that quite a bit. And
Hmm.
I knew him from X Files. I know him from because he's in like a million TV shows, and
Yeah,
he's
he's
just
in
one of
so
those.
much stuff.
He's in
Great
the
voice.
Justice. What?
Yeah, great voice, great presence.
Yeah, he's incredible. Like he's like one of those actors that like I've never seen him star in something, but every time he pops up on something, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be good, because like
Hmm.
he's just got great presence. And yeah, it looks like he was in Motwan too, I think. Maybe not. But yeah, it's directed by John Sayles, also a white guy. I guess this is like
Hmm.
like I said,
It's a
like
theme.
the whole
Yeah,
show. Well, Pootie Tang, did you ever see that?
yeah. Didn't
That was
was Louis C.K. I know he wrote that,
He
but
directed it. Yeah,
he directed
yeah.
that too. Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember back in the day when he would go on Conan, and the original title was like Pootie Tang sign your money to the running kind, or whatever that long thing he
Hmm.
said, and everybody always
Yeah,
thought he was joking, and then it finally came out. Um, but yeah, that's yeah, dude. I have to watch this. This looks good because yeah, I
yeah.
love Joe, and I like John Sayles a lot too.
Hmm.
He's great. Well, cool, man. Well, thanks. So my recommendation, I went through a couple of them while we were talking. Putney Swope. You can
Okay,
find
yeah, yeah.
Folks can find that anywhere. It's
Okay.
hilarious. Um, One of my friends, every time I post about it, tells me it's problematic. I don't know. I just think it's funny. It cracks me up. It's one of Paul Thomas Anderson's all-time favorite movies. That's how I came upon it. Back in the '90s, whenever Boogie Nights came out,
Hmm.
he kept talking about that movie, and I was like, "This is like blockbuster days. I couldn't find that movie anywhere."
Hmm.
And I completely forgot about it. And then Paul Thomas Anderson was on Mark Maron, and he was like, "Oh yeah, Putney Swope." And I was like, "Oh, I've always wanted to see movies by Downey Jr." Um, and so I bought a box set, and man, his movies are great. Like they're ridiculous. Um,
Yeah.
I stole a joke from that movie too. I steal jokes all the time. So Putney Swope, I recommend. And then as far as Kiyoshi Kurosawa, um, I really like this one called Tokyo Sonata, and
Okay.
it's I would say if you're a fan of Parasite, definitely give it a
Okay.
shot. It's not like Parasite, but it's also about a family. They're not Korean. This is a Japanese family, but it's a
Hmm.
family central, an Asian family story. And I don't know how to describe it exactly. It's like multiple stories. The son like is in love with a piano teacher, so even though he doesn't like playing piano, he takes lessons. And then there's like a story about that actor, the main actor in the one you watched, Doppelganger. He like
Yeah.
breaks into their house halfway through. That's kind of what reminded me of Parasite. And
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
I think it's one of his better ones. I'd say like Doppelganger, Cure, and Tokyo Sonata are the three of
Okay.
the ones that stick with me the most. And they're all fairly easy to see. If anybody has this really great app, Tubi TV, the free movie app,
Yeah.
they get stuff on there. Yeah, and I don't know. Did I have anything else, Renee? Did I forget? I recommended some. I think that might.
I think that was it. Yeah, I'm gonna find both of those. They
Yeah.
actually showed Putney Swope at Landmark Midtown, I think, last year for one
No,
of
dude,
their.
it was 2 years ago. It was the last thing I did before we
Oh,
got
it was
locked
2 years ago.
down.
Okay.
I went
Oh,
with
okay. Yeah. Okay.
I
Yeah.
went with Sean
That's right.
Zierfoss, who you know, and Jeff Shipman. We all went
Yep.
to go
Yep.
see it, and then like 2 days later, I couldn't leave the house. Um,
Wow. Yeah.
yeah,
I
it,
wanted to see it then, and I didn't make it. So yeah, I'm
like I
gonna.
said, it's short and it's really ridiculous,
Mhm.
and like I don't know, I just have this thing in my brain where I really just watch stuff for what it is, and I understand that there's like social politics and things
Mhm.
surrounding films and art, but for me, there's just good jokes in this movie, and I didn't find it to be like a black exploitation movie, although it's a white director making a black movie. So I guess you could argue. I don't know. Somebody told me you could argue it is, but it's about an ad agency that's mostly white, and then the main guy dies, and it's almost like a Coen Brothers movie. Like he kills over on the table, and they're like, "We got to vote somebody in," and everybody jokingly votes in Putney Swope, and then he's like, "Well, I promise I'm not going to shake things up too much." And then the camera like spins around, and everybody's been replaced. Like all the white people have been replaced, and so like all these black guys start making these like crazy ads for people. And a lot of the movie is like it'll just show a commercial they made that's really
Oh
surreal and
wow.
bizarre. Yeah,
Yeah, I like that premise.
I think you'll like it. Like I said, it's really good. All right. Well, I think we did a lot of damage in under 45 minutes.
Word.
So yeah, thanks. Sorry we had to put it off a couple weeks, but I'm glad you're here. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Same.
and then check out. Oh yeah, Renee told me I have to plug my book. I have a book out. If
Oh yeah,
anybody
that's
wants
right.
to support the show, if you think I'm hilarious with my bathrobe, you should read my writing. It's a bunch of short stories and little jokes, and it's kind of like deep thoughts or something, like Jack Handy. It's like kind of that style. But yeah, I hope you guys like it, and yeah, I'll put a link whenever this goes live on Friday because people need to check out your music. It's good stuff. All right, cool. Thanks, Zano.
Where can we get your book though?
Oh, it's on like Barnes and Noble and Amazon. But
Okay. Cool.
if you go to lulu.com, it's the easiest way because like all those other places, the payments get held up for months and months. It's really bizarre. But Lulu is really nice and they send me checks really fast. So uh,
Okay. Nice.
and they give me the biggest cut. So if you guys really want to help me out, um, but yeah, it's what it is. That was my plug. But yeah, thanks. So yeah, Space is the place. Doppelganger. You guys got some movies to watch. Over and
Yeah.
out.
All right, man.
Thanks,
Thank
Zeno.
you. Take it easy.